My name is Matthew East. I've been working in the NDIS space since 2021, I think. Um, I've seen a lot of stuff, and I kind of need to start communicating what I've seen to the public and my own community, um, because it's bloody horrifying. And I think the best way I can get to the core of the issue is describing my first day at work as a disability support worker. Right. So first, what you need to understand about the NDIS is that it's a for-profit system, and we have a lot of private companies. These private companies work with the most vulnerable people in society. The purpose of the NDIS is to facilitate the interaction between the government and the private sector. The idea is that the private sector is able to regulate itself and match supply and demand. So, if a person needs rehabilitation for drug and alcohol problems, the idea is that the private sector, due to the miracle of the invisible hand of capitalism, is going to start providing that service. There is some legitimacy to that. Um, there's also a lot of horrors which occur because of it. So, on my first day as a disability support worker, I rock up to this house, what's called a supported independent living home. This is a house which is either owned or rented by the disability support worker company. And um, depending on the home, you might have one or two clients in it. This one just had one, and it was this bloke who had grown up in the foster system, had a disability, had was addicted to amphetamines, had a lot of issues. Um, I didn't know shit about him. They didn't tell me anything. There was just rock up at the house, the person that's going to give you a handover, right? It's a very cowboy industry because the time that you're spending training someone is time which isn't is time that you need to pay them, and it's also time where you aren't making money. It's a for-profit system, remember. So I rock up. The lady who's meant to give me her handover, she runs away, right? Because she needs to drop her kids off at school. She has severe ADHD. She's barely can keep it together. She's had no training, really. She didn't even have a certificate. Um, and she, like, so I'm sitting here in the home. First day, I know I'm going to be working with this guy who's addicted to amphetamines, which I just kind of get from like some general chit chat I have with the manager. Uh, and this guy and I just sit down and I start reading through the documentations and stuff because and just trying to get a hand on how this SIL house works and what my job is. Um, Either way, old mate wakes up. Turns out he's been on a bender for the last 3 days. He's having the amphetamines come out of his system and he's just completely crashed. He wakes up and the first thing he asks me is, "Hey, can I use the work phone?" All right. And I've just found the work phone. I found the keys to the house because, again, no handover. I'm just trying to figure out what my fucking job is. And I start, and I give it to him. And he organizes a drug deal in front of me over the phone. This is a very strange situation to be in. Um, Remember, I've just started this job and I'm a bit concerned about this. So I say, "Hey, mate, sorry, like, I like because he asks me, "Hey, can you drop me off so I can do this drug deal?" And then I feel a little bit reserved about that, so I give my boss a call. It's like, "Oh no, 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 that's not something we do, right? That's a reportable thing." I was like, "Yeah, that makes a bit of sense." Um, I later found out that what had been happening is that they had been taking him to these drug deals, um, and they just had this brilliant realization that that's not something they should be doing. Um, Either way, getting back to the story. So now what I do is that I describe to him, hey mate, just got word from office. Um, I'm not going to take you to your drug deal. It's not something we do. It's not part of my job. And old mate, he flips the shit. He starts throwing stuff all over the house. He starts putting holes in the wall. He starts throwing the garbage bins around. And eventually I'm like, hey, mate, uh, I heard that your Centrelink money came in, right? Because that's something that my boss had told me on the phone as I was having this conversation. So I now am able to sort of talk him down. He's like, hey man, you can get your smokes. Like, you can't get that, but we can get you your smokes, right? And that settles him down a bit. And I finally get him to calm down. Eventually, my boss rocks up. He explains to this guy that, hey, yeah, you put holes in the wall. We're going to call the police. Like, fair enough. Um, but that's that day, okay? And that's the first shift. Things escalate with this guy, right? So this is the calm part. Things get fucking hectic from here. So what happens next is that we find out that hey, he's gone AWOL. So I rock up to the house and I find he's not here for another on one shift, and we haven't. No one's been able to find him for days, right? So what I do is I'm like, okay, like this guy, like I'm training as a psych, like I've got this all these lofty ideas about healthcare professionals and duty of care for your client. So what I do is that I track him down, right? I go all Mandalorian bounty hunter, not in a sinister way, just start talking to his associates. We find his friends, and I just kind of get this trail of where he's gone. And eventually, I find that he's in this flop house, right? And there's this guy who's saying he's taking care of him. And at this point, like, I've only had the smallest kind of interactions with the underworld. Like, occasionally I'd be at a party and there might be some guy who's a bad, like a proper bad man, but I've never really been like I've only had an introductory course to organized crime. So either way, I find this guy. I report back, hey, there's this guy. He's taking care of him. Um, it's a bit odd, but like whatever. Um, and then I find out a couple of shifts later, after a colleague goes to this house, that this guy, something's not right. Like, these guys look like they're tweaking. Um, Understandable. Uh, so what we do, what I do, is that I have another conversation with this guy because I need to get him to have his medication because this guy he has I can't remember the exact diagnosis. I thought it was schizophrenia. He had serious mental health problems. Okay, and I'm not going. I'm responsible for this guy. I'm going to take care of him. So end up going back, um, and I noticed the people in the house. They kind of dodge in and out. Their car's recently been stolen. The guy who I'm working with has no teeth. Like, not the guy who's supposedly taking care of him and says he's an Aboriginal elder. Um, and what I find out is like, yeah, no, these guys are on fucking meth. Um, and I go through this very strange set of interactions. So I escalate from my boss to the person who's the director of the disability support company, and she comes down and she like she says, yeah, no, pass off their medication. Um, and we begin the process of trying to facilitate this guy's legal issues because he got in trouble for having the drug utensils from the police. Um, if I'm honest, the police, in most instances, when we're talking with disabled people in Queensland, at least in Toowoomba, they weren't the good guys. They really persecute the mentally ill there. It's not so much the case here in Canberra. Um, so getting back to the story, we go through the process of having to transfer this guy's stuff on to the gang lawyer, passing off his medication. And this is like in my first week and a half of being a support worker. And things only escalate and get weirder and crazier from here. And I'm going to have to start talking to a lot of different people about these experiences because this for profit system is not in the best interest of our clients. It doesn't facilitate the correct training of employees. It doesn't facilitate the appropriate duty of care by the people who are in charge of them. And the human toll on the staff and the clients is horrific. Um, and if I'm honest, it needs to stop. We need to put a lot of the genie back in the bottle when it comes to the NDIS, and much of it needs to return to government. We cannot have these private companies and these corporate fuckers running amok and exploiting the vulnerable, which is what I've seen, experienced, and for a while been a part of. I have worked for conmen. I have worked for corporations whose only motive is money and will happily abandon people, abandon their clients and staff the moment things look like it might not make them as much as they'd like. Um, so I encourage you to sort of share my story. I'm going to be creating some more stories, um, and that's all I'm going to say for tonight. Cheers.